Welcome to Love in Life, a guide to a positive mindset. My aim is to show you that the key to a happier and more positive mind is to love the life you have. We will look at tips and tools you can use to improve your mindset, and the best thing is, we'll all be on this journey together. Guys, just before you listen to this episode, I just wanted to add a note on at the beginning. I recorded this yesterday. It's about the fear of being judged. I've been really unsure about this episode. I feel quite vulnerable about it. I just guess I wanted to say, before you judge anyone, just consider that you might not always know the whole story. I've decided to post it and I hope you like it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Love in Life. This is episode 29. What kind of a week has everyone had? Mine has been highly emotional. And I was very, very hormonal last week. And I just seemed to cry at everything. I came on Friday, which was interesting because Hayley came on as well on the same day. And I always think that's strange when you're aligned, your periods are aligned with those who you're close to. So that's something I'd like to look into in the future. So yeah, it's been a very emotional, hormonal few days. And sadly, we lost our pet hamster on the weekend as well. So, and I know some people might think, oh, hamster, but we bloody loved this hamster. We bought it for my youngest son a couple of years ago. And honestly, she was just the best little hamster you could ever ask for. She was so cute and so cuddly and had such a character. And people who haven't had hamsters probably think it's a bloody hamster. But honestly, they all have their own individual characters, don't they? So yeah, that was really quite sad on the weekend. So yeah, it's been hormonal, emotional, and yeah, I mean, I've been feeling for the last 3 weeks, probably about a week before Christmas or a few days before Christmas, I've just felt that everything is so, nothing seems to be easy. And I've been looking a lot into planet retrogrades lately. And I follow quite a lot of people on Instagram and on YouTube who talk about it. And I find it so interesting. And I'm wondering if the reason why I've been feeling, for the last 3 weeks, that everything just seems very hard work. And I'm wondering if that has had something to do with the Mercury retrograde, which is ending in the next couple of days. So, if you're interested in that kind of thing, have a look. If you know about that kind of thing, then please do let me know. If you think, the fact that I've been feeling that way, very low energy for the last 3 weeks, let me know if you think that's got something to do with it. If you are a bit of an expert on that kind of thing, I would love to know. Obviously, I have been ill as well, so that would explain some of my low energy. But it is funny how all these things happen at once, isn't it? So I'd love to know if you've been feeling the same. Have you been feeling low on energy? Have you been feeling that everything happens on top of each other and struggling to keep up with everything? Let me know. Now, the subject I want to talk about today is the fear of being judged. And I'm pretty sure I can safely say that this is something that we all experience. We all have times in our lives where we have to make decisions, we have to make changes. And quite often we worry about what people are going to think of us when we do the thing or we make the change. But before I delve into this, let's just have a look. Let's just go back to the beginning and have a look at what judgment actually is. Judgments are another form of a decision-making process. And we all make judgments every single day of our lives. Whether it's crossing a road, whether it's when you're driving, whether it's when you're deciding if you can trust somebody. We have to make these judgments because these are what keep us safe. So it's human nature. It's in our DNA to make judgments. We all have to make them. But there comes a time in our lives where we start to worry about what judgments people are making about us. And, we aren't born fearing judgment. When you're a baby or a toddler, if you have children yourself, or if you have nieces or nephews, grandchildren, what have you, watch them. They don't fear being judged. If you go into a class of reception kids, and I remember this very well from when I trained to be a teacher, if you're the teacher and let's say you're doing the register or something, all the kids are sat on the carpet, the amount of kids that will be picking their nose and eating it or whatever, they will do things right in front of you and they don't care. They don't give a shit who's watching. They don't worry about what other people are going to think. It's only then when we as adults, so as their parents, as the teacher, whoever, we'll say something to them like, don't pick your nose in front of people. People will think you're disgusting. We then put that fear of judgment into children. That's where our fear of judgment has come from. It stemmed from something that would have been said to us as a child and it's stuck. It's made you worry about how people perceive you, what people see you doing, what decisions you're going to make. And to a certain extent, that's not a bad thing, I guess, because if we did all carry on picking our noses as adults without people saying to us, don't pick your nose, people think you're disgusting, then everyone would think we're disgusting. So, it's not always a bad thing. However, we then begin to assess all of our behaviours, thinking, am I going to get judged for this? And thinking about it, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this as well, or think of your own experiences, but those sort of mid-childhood days, so I don't know, let's say mid-primary school, right up until the end of senior school, I'd say, those are prime years for feeling judged and setting examples to yourself of how you're going to allow yourself to be judged in the future. And I remember I was late primary school and I had a group of friends who, one girl in particular would laugh at me for anything. Like, I remember telling her that I liked an ABBA song, which we're talking late 80s, early 90s here. So ABBA weren't really, like they've made a sort of comeback. It's been cool to listen to the old ABBA songs in the last, few years. But then when I was like 10, 11, whatever, it was really uncool. And I remember getting laughed at for that. And, little things, they would find anything they could to judge me and to laugh at me. And it got to the point when I was probably 12, 13, when my mum really picked up on the fact that I was dreading going to school and picked up on the fact that I was being picked on. And I don't like to use the word bullied because there's so many different extremities of it. But when you are made to feel like an outcast with no friends because they're all laughing at you, that puts you in a really bad place. And I remember being taken out of that situation, and luckily the school dealt with it brilliantly. There was no animosity when I got taken away from the situation. It didn't, sometimes that can make it worse, I guess, but it didn't. But what it did do is make me fear being judged about everything. And thinking about it, I remember, and I've never really told anybody this, but I remember I probably had the onset of an eating disorder. when I was in, my mid-teens, I remember going to school of a morning. On the way to school, we would go to the shops and I'd probably have like 2 chocolate bars. Like, what kid doesn't? But then I wouldn't eat anything else for the rest of the day. And I'd make up some excuse about not being hungry at school, and then make up some excuse when I got home of an evening, because I was so petrified. And I guess that was one way of me dealing with it. I wanted to be skinny. I wanted to be, I wasn't particularly cool. So I wanted to at least be skinny and have a nice body. And luckily, it didn't really lead to anything detrimental. Like, I don't even know if my mum knows about that. But I do remember my high school boyfriend that I had at the time. I used to go to his house quite a lot, and I remember his mum picking up on it. And I remember that she wouldn't let me leave until I'd eaten a good meal. I guess we're pretty good at hiding it from those who are really close to us. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going off on one now. But I guess what I'm trying to say is fear of judgment starts in childhood at some point, depending on our circumstances. And as we go through life, we all go through different situations and have different experiences. And these, in my opinion and in my experience, form the basis and the foundations of what we fear being judged about. So the fear of judgment comes when we first experience pain from the judgment of others. And then we teach ourselves to fear it. We teach ourselves to expect it. So as we can be prepared, we prepare ourselves for what other people may think about us to keep us safe. So in preparation for this episode, I have watched quite a few like YouTube videos and read a few articles on the fear of being judged. And something that I have found really interesting is, and it's a Jungian belief, and it's about the shadow self. And I know I've talked about the shadow self in the past, but the belief is that when someone is judging you, it's not actually you they're judging. It's usually an insecurity that they are repressing. And we can flip this. So if you think about something that you might judge somebody else on, whether you're vocal about it or not, you know the judgmental thoughts that you have in your head. We all have judgmental thoughts. I've said this at the beginning. It's human nature to make judgments. Some of them, you don't speak out loud, and that's fine, but we still have judgments. So if, for example, you find yourself judging somebody on their appearance, you might be the kind of person that struggles with self-esteem with your appearance. Something I know a lot of people do is judge others on their parenting style. And if you do find yourself doing this, then maybe you have some kind of insecurity on your own parenting style. I know I've done it in the past, and I'm not going to lie, I have had insecurities on my parenting style. I think we all do. So flipping it back to others judging you, just take it as reassurance that if you do find somebody making negative comments towards an aspect of your life, then just be reassured that it's probably some kind of insecurity that they have. And, with all due respect, that's not for you to worry about. Unless they're a really close person to you, then you might feel the need to help them out in some way. But it's not for you to worry about what insecurities other people have. Something else that I found really interesting was when we fear people's judgment, really what is going on for us is what we fear it means to us. So we usually fear judgments on the things that we are struggling to deal with. So this is very much linked to the last point I was saying. Obviously, the last point I made was that when somebody is judging you, it's not actually you they're judging. It's usually an insecurity on their part. But the things that we fear being judged about are the things that we have insecurities about. And I'm not going to lie, I have fears about being judged about lots and lots of things. And I think that says a lot about my self-esteem and my insecurities. And you'll find out a little bit more about that in a minute. But if you think about it, we know we get judged on loads of things every single day. But there are certain things that we don't worry about being judged on. Like if there's something that you don't feel worried about being judged about, then that's usually because you are completely secure about that situation. And actually, you couldn't give a shit about what someone thinks in that situation because you're that secure in it. So secure that it doesn't bother you what people think. So the fact that you fear judgment in an area is usually an indication of what you need to work on internally yourself. And this is very much reminding me of, do you remember that episode I did talking about the universal laws? This reminds me very much of the law of correspondence, when I said that our outer reality is a reflection of our inner reality. So our reality is a mirror of what's happening inside of us at that moment. So if we are feeling fear over being judged about something, then that can be used as an indication of what areas of ourself we need to develop and what we need to work on. I was watching a video made by Marie Forleo, who is amazing. If you've never followed her, then I highly recommend you go follow her. But Marie Forleo says, we as humans have an ability to get others to judge us on what we judge ourselves for. And I think this happened to me last week. So going back to my last point about the things that we fear being judged about are usually things that we feel insecure about. And in last week's episode, I mentioned something that I feel deeply scared of being judged about, and that is what school the boys go to. And I very flippantly, where I was so nervous about bringing it in, because it was relevant to the content last week, but where I was so nervous about bringing it up, I just flippantly said, because the boys go to a private school, and then I moved on. And I had feedback last week about bragging that the boys go to private school. And this, I'll be honest, was literally my worst nightmare coming true. Because it's something since they've been going, which has only been since April for Alfie and September for George. But since they've been going, I'm too scared to tell people for fear of being judged that we pay for our kids to go to school. Like, I know that I've had blocks over telling people about that. It's something I've been dealing with my coach and in all the other work that I've been doing. And so I'm not going to lie, it cut me real deep because I barely mentioned it. And I know it's the only time I've ever mentioned it in any of my podcasts because I am so nervous about talking about it and about telling people about it because it's such an insecurity of mine. And I know it sounds silly to have an insecurity. Like, I know what an amazing position we're in to be able to send our boys there. But it's not as if we send them there because we've got so much money we don't know what to do with. We have made a choice to sacrifice other things to send our boys to a school that respects that all children have different interests. something that isn't really picked up on in a state school, because government ministers have such a say over what our children learn. I don't know, that's obviously just my opinion. And bearing in mind that only 5 years ago, after a couple of wrong decisions or poor decisions that were made, which meant losing Craig's business and almost going bankrupt, and so for it to have been brought to my attention that it feels that I'm bragging about it, that's just exactly what I was scared about, to be honest. So it just goes to show that when you have an insecurity about something, the way you talk about it does draw attention to it, and it may draw judgment. And obviously it's not the intention to draw any judgment, but because of the way I flippantly brushed past it, it might have sounded that I'm bragging about it because of how flippantly I mentioned it. But in reality, it's because of how nervous I am about telling people about it. So like Marie Forleo says, if we have an insecurity on something, you have an ability to evoke a reaction in others. Excuse Hugo barking in the background there. So if you feel that you have been judged on something unfairly, don't necessarily assume that the person judging you is intentionally being nasty or means to upset you just because they don't get what you do or what you've been through, what your circumstances are. And something that I've had to do is maybe consider if you need to explain it better. Like my flippant way of saying, because the boys go to a private school, has evoked this reaction in somebody. I haven't given any context around it. I haven't given any context around what we had to do to get there and what we had to go through to get ourselves into the comfortable position that we are in for the first time in our lives. So if you've got something coming up, or, you know, if you have got something that you feel too scared or too nervous to talk about through fear of being judged by people, then just question maybe what you can do for yourself. So we've learned that fear of being judged about something is usually fear of your own insecurities. So just reassure yourself and do the work you need to do to repair your own insecurities and to prove to yourself that you don't need to prove to anybody else. Like, you're doing this, whatever it is, you're doing this for you. And eventually, hopefully, that leads to you stopping judging yourself. And I'm not saying this because I'm a master at this. God knows I am not. I am working through this with you. And the minute we stop judging ourselves is when other people judging us will stop as well. It's not about perfecting ourselves, because if we try to be perfect, we're going to try to be something we're not and put unnecessary pressure on ourselves. We need to learn to love and accept ourselves for what we are, and learn to recognize the areas that we need to work on for our own self-development. And this is going to be different for everybody. Sometimes we just have to accept that judgment is coming, because it is human nature. As I said at the very beginning, we all have to make judgments. It is part of our DNA. It's part of human nature. It's a habit to make judgments. So you are going to get judgments. And sometimes we can welcome those judgments. Sometimes we can choose whether we want to listen to that judgment or not. Sometimes we can choose whether we want to flip it and reframe it. But sometimes we have to just accept that we all have different perspectives. And if we go back to, again, my episode on the universal laws, the law of relativity says that everything is relative because we all perceive reality in our own way. And this is because we all have different experiences in life, and we all have to have something to compare our reality to. And we can only go on what our experiences are. So one person has one perspective, and your perspective is your perspective because you have different experiences in life. You have different lessons that you can draw from that make your reality, not somebody else's reality. And when you find yourself making judgments, consider that you may not know the full story, because a lot of the time judgments are made on either our own experiences or simply on assumption. So when you find yourself judging the single mum with multiple children, and I'm using this as an example because it is a very common stereotypical judgment to make, but don't assume that all her kids are from different dads. And even if they are, you don't know what her circumstances are. You don't know what she's been through. And if you are the single mum with multiple children and you fear being judged on that, just remember the law of relativity. People are only going on their own relative experiences that they have. People don't know the full story, and fuck them. You know you're doing a great job. You know the reasons why you're doing what you do. So do the work. If you're feeling insecure, do the work you need to do to become secure about it. And then finally, the nicest thing to remember when you feel like you are being judged is that when someone is judging you, it's not actually you they're judging. It's a reflection of their insecurities. And the nicest thing we can do as people, as humans, as nice human beings, is to not judge them back for having those insecurities, because then it just becomes a vicious circle. And respect their insecurities. Do what you can to make them feel more secure. I hope this episode has helped when you feel judged, because we all do every now and again. From time to time we feel exposed, and it's not a nice feeling, but hopefully some of these tips will help. I just want to say a massive thank you to those of you who filled out the survey last week. I just wanted a bit of feedback on the podcast. Quite a few people have said they'd love to have guests on the show. So that is something that I will have a think about introducing in the near future when I find the right people. I just want you to know, if you did fill out a survey, obviously it's completely anonymous, but I do want you to know that I do respect every single bit of feedback, whether it's nice feedback or constructive feedback, and just know that I do bear all thoughts and opinions in mind. Obviously I can't please everybody, but I'd like to. The last thing I just want to say is, last year in February, I did the book, The Magic. So I'm going to do it again this February. If anybody is interested in doing it with me again, then I might just put a little link in my link as usual. So please let me know if that's something that you would be interested in doing. I will be starting it on the 1st of Feb, regardless of who's doing it with me. So if that is something you want to do, go ahead and buy the book if you haven't already got it. If you're not aware of The Magic, it's a 28-day gratitude process written by the author of the book, The Secret. It gives you activities to do every day, each morning, that build upon each other, and it just puts you in a state of gratitude every day, meaning that you're more likely to attract the things that you're grateful for, and more likely to attract more of what you want. If you truly embrace it and do all the practices every day, then crazy shit happens. So yeah, I'd love you to join me. Thanks as always for tuning in this week, guys, and have a great week. I'll speak to you next week. Bye.